Jae-kyung is an orphan, and I will tell you why. The first tip off to this is his obsession with material wealth and status. We know that rich people love money, but who loves money more than anybody? A formerly poor person, somebody who knows the value of such wealth and status. He has everything he wants, and he has everything he wants because he came from a place and had a childhood where he got nothing that he needed. Another obvious indicator is the lack of familial presence. We never see his family or hear of his family at any of his games, and if they existed, even if they were freeloading good-for-nothings, they would come after him for his money. If they did love him, they would at least make a showing to come to the fight. Jae-kyung has clearly never been loved. This is one of the key things that brings me to the conclusion that he is an orphan. Jae-kyung is told he's loved in the heat of a moment. It seems so caught off guard that I thought to myself, has anyone ever told him he loves him? Anyone ever? If not his parents, maybe an ex. No, he has no exes to speak of, only people he's used to rid himself of the Jinx. If Coach has never told Jae-kyung that he loves him, Kim Dan may be the first person who has ever said, I love you. That explains a ton of Jae-kyung's behavior to me. You may be asking yourself, why is it important if Jae-kyung was an orphan? Well, because I have some theories. Baek Jumin seems to be the only person who knows anything about Jae-kyung's past, and that seems to be the most upsetting thing to him. It's not really if he wins or loses, but if whatever Baek Jumin knows gets out to the public. He says, oh, are you gonna act like a little bitch like you used to? And that brings us back to the orphanage, where I believe Jumin and Jae-kyung were in a home together. My theory is that Baek Jumin is a little bit older than Jae-kyung, and that the kids all fought each other for dominance. Because Baek Jumin was a bit larger, he physically overpowered Jae-kyung throughout their childhood, and I imagine that he also may have, in a very non-con way. He didn't, then whoever led the group home abused both Baek Jumin and Jae-kyung. This is where he got confused about what it means to engage in another person in an intimate way. If it wasn't Baek Jumin who had abused him, then I think it was their group home owner. And even if he wasn't abused by either of those people, I do think he was forced in some way to like bare knuckle fight Baek Jumin in the group home, and that's where he learned to fight, and that's where this rivalry came from. How will this affect the redemption arc? I think that these sympathetic talking points, Jae-kyung having no family, having no love, gives us more of an idea of why he would treat someone like Kim Dan the way he treats him. It's important to note that when Jae-kyung first met Kim Dan, he seemed to kind of despise him for being walked on and being able to be pushed over. He also seemed to despise his living situations, and I think that's very indicative of somebody who has a hard time facing their past and how they used to live, maybe in abject poverty, maybe in squalor in a group home. I think projecting that on Dan. I think he's also projecting on Dan's his own ability to get out of this situation. Kyung got out of the group home. He went on to make his own money, open his own gym, make something of himself, never bottom again, never be a bitch again, never lose again. He wants to see Kim Dan stand up for himself in that same way. Once we understand that, he's wanted Kim Dan to raise himself up by his bootstraps and get on with his life. That's what Jae-kyung wants of Kim Dan, and he pushes him to see if he'll ever stand up for himself. And Kim Dan's just not going to. He's a softie, and he's always going to be a softie. And until Jae-kyung realizes that he can't bully him into being tougher, and that tough love isn't going to work on Kim Dan, we aren't going to get the redemption arc. When we understand fully Jae-kyung's backstory and why he might be treating this person the way he's treating them, and then watch him stop treating him that way and accept Kim Dan for who he is, becomes his protector, that's when we'll finally have our redemption arc. My theory is simple. I believe he was an orphan who was toughened up in the orphanage, became a street fighter, and then became an MMA championship. What are your theories? Please leave in the comment. Also follow along for more Jinx content.